You've cloned yourself, and you don't even know you did it. And I'm not talking about science fiction. I'm talking about the version of you that learned how to survive and then slowly, quietly started replacing the original. Because most people think they have an identity. What they actually have is a behavioral copy, and it's built for safety. Yeah, it looks like you, it speaks like you, it even believes it is you. But it was constructed around approval, threat, and timing, not around your core signal. See, and this is the critical aspect. The clone can run your whole life and still never let you meet yourself. So I'm going to answer two questions in this video. The first one is, what does cloned actually mean? And how did it happen? And then there's also a subtle third question that sits beneath all of it. And that's the one I'm actually most intrigued by. Can I stop living as the copy? Because once you see the copy, you really can't ignore it. So here's what I mean by clone. And the moment you can spot it in real time, it loses all of its power. See, a clone is what happens when the body learns how to get through a situation, a room, or life, and then the mind turns that into a survival pattern, into me. And what's so important to understand is, we didn't choose it. You don't choose it. It chose you first. So when I was young, I think you'll recognize this as well, I learned quickly that certain expressions that I conveyed were either met with warmth or created tension. One look got love, another look got punishment. One tone received acceptance, while another was shut down. One kind of honesty got me closer to people, another kind of honesty made everything go cold. And this is where it actually gets built, not in thought, but in atmosphere. See, the body learns this long before the mind has a language for it. It learned the rules of the room before the mind figured out any of it. And that's the part I missed for the longest time. See, I thought my identity was a choice I made. But so much of it was formed before I ever sat down and decided anything. And here's how it feels from the inside. So, my soul enters the world seated in me, seated in the heart field, and it's oriented towards what's true, what's coherent, what's real. Right? It's the part of me that's steady. It doesn't brace at existence. It doesn't bargain with life. It doesn't negotiate its right to be here. But then there's the environment. And the environment has density, expectations, fear, culture, mood, people's unspoken rules, power, dynamics. You can't ignore the invisible, right? This is allowed. This is not allowed. That you can feel. And you can feel this in the air before anybody says a word. And the cost is subtle. You stay safe, but you start living as an edited version of you. And the body adapts to survive inside that field. It learns timing. It learns when to speak, when to stay quiet. It learns what to show and what to hide. It learns which version of me keeps the temperature stable. Then the mind does what it does, and it makes a story out of it. It builds an identity around those adaptations. And that identity becomes the clone. So it wasn't born from deception, it was survival intelligence and competence. And that's why I'm careful with how I say this, because if I call it fake, people hear an insult. I'm not insulting you, I'm just showing an actual mechanical process the ego is designed to do. So the clone is what's kept us functional, accepted, and safe enough to keep moving. It becomes so practiced, so consistent, so reinforced that it starts to feel like the real thing. And that's the next piece. Why does it feel so real? Right? The clone feels authentic because it's consistent. It has history, it has memories, and has preferences. It has a whole file folder of proof. So the more I performed it, the more my nervous system became entrained to it. And the field responds to it. It came to expect it. And eventually, I forgot it was constructed. It became so automatic that it's my default face, my default tone, my default way of being. Now this is how I knew it was real, because the mirror started telling on me. So I'd stand in front of the mirror, and what I see is a perfectly maintained identity. But the one behind the eyes, the one generating the signal, my soul, has been sitting quietly. That's the ache. That's the strange loneliness that can exist even inside success. And I learned this the hard way because I've lived on both sides of it. It showed up for me at the exact moment I should have felt the most secure. There were times or seasons in my life, so to speak, where everything fell into place. Life became coherent. I got huge jobs that came into the studio. I was busy doing what I loved. I was working with art directors in meetings. I was planning, renting props, gathering things I needed, and the merchandise was arriving at the studio every day. right? I had the dates booked and I knew the next few months were covered. So life was humming. And at the same time, there was this nagging worry. And oddly enough, when I think back, every time I looked in the mirror, every time I passed a mirror, every time I saw myself, even just a hint of a reflection, this fear popped up that it wasn't going to last. And then I'd start worrying, what if I didn't get another job? What if something happens and I lose the good thing? And that's when I started to see what was actually happening. It wasn't that something was wrong in the studio. It was that the part of me that learned to survive had quietly taken a position on joy. See, it didn't experience success as life is good. It experienced success as now we have something to lose. So that clone self I built unconsciously to get through life, it starts attaching to everything around it. The schedule, the clients, the momentum, the identity of being in demand, and certainty becomes its drug. Because certainty creates the illusion of safety. Now my soul can rebel in a good season without gripping it. It can receive the beauty of it and let it move. But my body, my survival layer gets very attached. The ego gets attached to the good life. And then its biggest fear becomes losing it. That fear doesn't just show up when things are bad. It shows up when things are good. Because when things are good, there's more exposure, more visibility, and more to lose. And the clone is built around controlling exposure. It's built around predicting outcomes. So even in a season of coherence, the clone can start scanning for collapse. And this is where I would get it wrong, because I thought, if I'm successful, I shouldn't feel this. But that's not how the clone works. See, the clone doesn't measure life by coherence. It measures life by control. And if I can't control the future, it tightens, even while you're winning. And this is where the clone exposes itself, because logic can't touch it, and it becomes almost absurd. And here's another example. I can create hundreds of spirit fractals that people have awed over and absolutely loved, and I've gotten feedback of gratitude. I can write books, and then I look in the mirror, and there's this nagging fear of being an imposter syndrome. It defies rational logic. It makes no sense. Like, why would that show up? And because that's the clone. It is an imposter. And it is so important to say it that way, because imposter syndrome isn't always, I'm not good enough. Sometimes it's, this identity I built can't hold what's coming through me. Right? The work is real, the signal's real, the impact is real, but the clone is still trying to claim authorship in a way it understands, through performance, through proof, through outcome. And it can't rest, because resting would mean letting go of control. And letting go of control feels like exposure. So the mirror becomes this strange place where the whole thing gets revealed. And it was not my face, it was my state, right? It's not your face, it's your state, your driver, it's who is looking. Am I seeing who I really am? Or am I seeing the version that I built? Because there's a huge difference between the two. And here's something else I've noticed from my own life. Okay, this is the part I resisted until I could hear it in my own voice. I can tell immediately when I'm recording a video if my body's racing or bracing, because my tone changes. See, my cadence changes, my pace changes. I can hear the clone. It gets higher in tone, shallower in breaths, faster and more managed. And as much as I hate admitting it, stopping and breathing brings it back. I wish there was some exotic answer, something more impressive, something more complicated, but breath shifts the state, and state changes who is looking. So when the body settles and feels safer, the clone loosens. When the clone loosens, the signal becomes legible again. So here's a more subtle aspect to this clone dance. Presence doesn't automatically fix it. Right? You can meditate and still be the clone. You can be present and still edit yourself. Presence is body awareness. Causality inward is letting the heart field signal lead. The problem isn't that you're absent. The problem is that the copy or clone is still doing the driving. So I return causality inward. The source or soul is seated in the heart field. The body reorganizes around it. The mind describes after, and that's the normal order. And you can feel it when the order flips, because the signs show up everywhere in ways so ordinary you miss them until you see the pattern. Right? When I'm living as the clone, I find I explain myself constantly. I adjust my tone depending on the room. I'll feel slightly delayed in my own reactions. I say yes and then feel a contraction. I feel off, but I can't justify why. right? That's the clone. It's optimized for acceptance. The original is optimized for coherence. And you can have acceptance without coherence. Plenty of people do. They're liked, they're successful, they're fine. And they're not met. They're not actually in contact with themselves. Now, meeting the original doesn't look dramatic. That's the part people really don't expect. See, the original isn't dramatic. It's steady. It doesn't shout or perform. It feels like quiet inevitability. It's the part of you that doesn't need to sell itself, defend itself, or prove its right to exist. It's just there, seated, present, waiting for the system to stop bracing long enough to be felt. And this is where the mirror becomes the cleanest teacher I've ever found, because it forces the question: can I stand in front of the mirror, look into my own eyes, and generate love for who I see? Can I actually say to my reflection, I see you, I know you, and I love you unconditionally? And hold that gaze, not for 2 seconds. Hold it long enough that the part of me that's scanning begins to soften. Hold it long enough that the urge to adjust my face, adjust my posture, adjust my expression begins to pass. And if I can't do that, that's where the work begins. Not the work of fixing myself, the work of meeting myself. The work of learning to recognize the clone without hating it. Because the clone isn't your enemy, it's your old protector. So when it rises, the move isn't to fight it. The move is to witness it, to love it, to see it, to acknowledge it, and to thank it. Thank you for keeping me safe. Thank you for trying to protect what I love. Thank you for scanning the horizon. And then instead of letting it drive, I let it sit beside me. I let it be present without being in charge. And in real life, there's a simple moment where this becomes obvious. So next time I'm about to speak, I just wait half a second longer than usual. Just half a second. And I notice whether the impulse is coming from adjustment or from signal. Adjustment has urgency. Signal has inevitability. Adjustment is calibrated for the room. Signal is calibrated for truth. And when I can feel the difference, I'm not trapped anymore, because I'm no longer unconsciously inside the copy. I'm in a relationship with it. I'm bigger than it. I can thank it, soften it, and return inward. You've cloned yourself. That's not a failure. It's how you survived, and survival copies you. Coherence reveals you. And the one looking back in the mirror is never missing, just waiting. Waiting for you to stop living as a copy long enough to meet the one who has been there the entire time. And when you finally hold that gaze, and you can say, I see you, I know you, I love you, and something in your body believes it, that's not a motivational moment, that's a return. That's ownership. That's the original taking its seat. And from there, life doesn't become perfect, but it becomes coherent, because it's finally being lived from the inside out. Thank you.